Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another artist conversation as a part of the Expressive Creative Soul art exhibition currently on display at the Bridge Art Gallery at our location in Wilmington, Delaware. Tonight, we are joined by the one and only Kortez, an esoteric abstract artist whose work lives at the intersection of music, identity, and cultural reflection. Describing his practice as esoteric urbanism, Kortez creates work that is both deeply rooted in the Black experience and intentionally layered, inviting viewers to look beyond the surface and engage with meaning in a more personal and interpretive way. A multidisciplinary creative spanning visual art, DJing, and cultural programming, Kortez's work is influenced by everything from hip hop to house music to lived experiences and social history. This evening, we'll explore his featured piece as a part of our current exhibition. And this piece is entitled A Song for Assata, a powerful, very powerful abstract reflection on memory, resilience, and legacy. So please join me in welcoming our featured artist this evening, Kortez. Good evening, Kortez.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Doing all right.
Yes, your fan club is already in the building. We have a Groove Factory saying yo, yo, yo. So Cortez, thank you so much for, participating in this artist conversation. And we're really excited to dive deeper, not only into the work that's featured in the gallery currently, but also your whole artistic journey, as well as, your thought process behind your work. So let's just dive right in. You
Okay.
refer to your work as esoteric urbanism. Can you unpack that phrase and what it means within your artistic practice?
Well, the elevator pitch is esoteric is means meant for or understood by a smaller select group, and urbanism is just my slick way of saying black. A friend of mine named Kim Jacobs was describing my artwork to her son, and at the time I believe he was like 13 or 14 years old, and now he's in his 20s or 30s, and he's a tattoo artist. And she described my work as esoteric urbanism and looked at me and said, "Run with it," and that was it. I ran with it.
That's amazing, and thanks so much for telling us your kind of your origin story to the name. What I think is really interesting is that your creativity crosses multiple creative disciplines like visual arts, DJing, and fashion. How do these different forms of expression inform each other?
Um, it's kind of like for me, it's a lifestyle thing. And I think now, in a couple weeks, I'm going to be 59 years old. It's so hard to believe. But figure from the time I knew what art was,
Hmm.
I was always trying to find myself. And so going through, being a kid, whatever you're interested in as a kid, that's what you're looking to create, right? So it started off maybe with comic books. Um, Graffiti was a big thing as a teenager, going through puberty, and I was attracted to women in the fashion magazines. So fashion fell into play. My mother used to always have interior design magazines in the house. So that falls into play and starts to pop up in my artwork. You fast forward to the MTV age and music videos, and as a kid, you're trying to find your voice in the music that you're listening to. So all that starts to pop into the artwork. And now, what ends up happening, the world around me, you have social media, you have, politics, social commentary, and again, goes back to the music. All of these things that I'm around inspires the artwork. In regards to the fashion, I like wearing things like this.
Hmm.
Um, I never thought of myself as really a fashion person until I tapped into the fact that I'm creating fashion. I'm creating trends. I was always the person that would wear something that was kind of offbeat or pushing the envelope a little. And it was intimidating when I was younger because you're kind of influenced by how people react. And my mother was the one that always kind of pushed that. Just if you're gonna wear it, wear it with hold your head up.
Right.
Wear it with purpose. And so now I'm very comfortable with it, and with whatever I do, even with the DJing. At one point, I would always kind of keep things separate, and that was because my father was always in my ear. You either be an artist or a DJ. The two
Hmm.
don't connect. And that's what he was telling me, but the two do connect. Just like with music and fashion go hand in hand. And when you look at branding, and I'm very much inspired by, I guess you could call it commercialism, capitalism, how we, in essence, sell a product. At the end of the day, art is a product. And so you can't help but to have that, or at least for me, I can only speak for myself. I can't help but to have that kind of filter into the artwork.
Right. So you mentioned music, and initially feeling like you had to decide between one or the other, and realizing that they were so intertwined. Music clearly plays a major role in your life and your work. How does sound actually influence your visual process?
I'm listening to music all the time. So when I'm at home working on a painting, there's music in the background. So when I started doing events and DJing out more, I do this thing called open turntables. And during the open turntables, it's kind of like an open mic, but we're using music. So people would bring vinyl, and you get 15 minutes, you play your vinyl. And so you have an evening curated where you have several people, not just the DJs, but people playing the vinyl. And after a while, I got sick of just sitting back and just not doing anything. So I started bringing my artwork to these events, and that's how a lot of my artwork gets started at these events. And going back to the late '90s, early 2000s, I used to do live painting with a company called Giant Step. And Giant Step sessions were these parties at this club called Shine in the city. And they would have major, you know, DJs from around the world playing at this venue. And then they would have live painting off to the side. So there was an artist by the name of Greg Christie. He was the one that put Jerry Gant down on that. And Jerry, in turn, reached out to me and said, "Hey, you want to come out to these parties and do this live painting?" And that's how it all started for me. So, doing artwork in a space where you have all this energy going on between the music and then the people, and then people coming up to you and talking to you, making suggestions or giving me their interpretation of what they're seeing, I found it to be very invigorating. It was fun. At the end of the day, it's fun. And so to have this interaction in real time as I'm creating, there's nothing else like it. I
You
just,
know, that's really interesting, because we often say that artists are the very bravest people on the planet, in the sense that you're putting your heart and your soul into, your artistry, your creation, and then you put it up for, public viewing. But you took it a step further by literally painting live in front of a live audience and having people comment as you're creating. Like, that's taking bravery, Kortez, to a whole other
Oh,
level.
thank you. Yeah, and it is interesting because a lot, you know, for me, it was a very private thing,
Hmm.
creating art, right? And then as I found this new way of doing it, it goes back also to graffiti, where graffiti is taking the art to the street. So
Right.
in my case, I'm not doing it illegally. So I'll just set up a canvas and just paint. Sometimes I go across the street in the park and just paint. People will come by and stop and talk, and the conversation creates something right there on the spot. And it's very spontaneous. And a lot of times I get information from these people and I'm able to put in the art right then and there. And it's a beautiful thing.
So you're still going now into the park and painting live as people
Well,
are.
not well. The weather's been kind of funny, but as the weather gets warmer, yeah, I'm just gonna start doing canvases on the street, basically. Um,
So
keep
when
it
you're
easy.
having,
Hmm?
yeah, when you're having that kind of engagement, Cortez, you said that, sometimes you'll infuse the art. Do you sometimes find that you'll start off with, kind of one thing in mind, one direction, and then people are coming in and it just completely changes the trajectory of the artwork that you're working on
Oh,
at that
yeah.
time?
As a matter of fact, the guy that popped in earlier, his name is Groove Factor.
Hmm.
He was spinning one night at this spot in Jersey City. And so I'm outside the club, painting because inside it gets a little hot and it's a little cramped, right? So as I'm painting, somebody comes up to, as my friend Charlie says, "Oh, that looks like a skull." I didn't see a skull. And
Hmm.
next thing you know, I'm painting a skull. And I turned the painting into a skull and it worked out. And I wasn't feeling it. And the funny thing is, with a lot of my artwork, if I'm not feeling it, but somebody else is liking it, I kind of
Hmm.
go with the flow. Because for some odd reason, if I don't like it, I got something going on, something special is happening because other people are gravitating towards it. And that's the purpose of art. You want it to speak to people. So I listen now. Before I was kind of hard headed and
Hmm.
painted over several things and even painting over artwork. That's something that I always do now. I'll paint something, and because I'm very spontaneous, I'll hit the canvas and then I'm like, I'm not feeling that. And I'll put it away. And then next thing you know, maybe 4 or 5 months down the line, I'm like, oh, I got something to go with this. And then it starts up again. Like that painting, Make Me Wanna Holler, that you have,
Yes.
the big one. Um,
Yes.
that started out as a simple abstract that I wasn't feeling. But I love the texture with these new. I have a bunch of them right here, but with these abstract pieces,
Hmm.
they take on. They just go places, and sometimes in not liking this, what'll end up happening is I'll turn it into say this, and there's no such. A friend of mine used to say, "There's no such thing as a mistake as an artist," and this is coming from a woman who wasn't an artist. Um, Again, creating in those public spaces, I'm painting and I'll mess up something, and I was like, I'm done with this, and they say, no, 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 no. There's no such thing as a mistake. Make it work. and that coming from a person who wasn't an artist, um, that's very valuable. So I look at every piece now as a potential masterpiece, even if I don't like it.
I love that each piece is a masterpiece, and it's just, it's just probably requires a little bit of tweaking, or it's still your creation, but it may be viewed as a masterpiece by the new collector
Right.
that's taking it
It takes a
home.
little time, and then also getting over that vulnerable place of not showing the work. I remember at one time it took a lot to give up a piece. And when I
Mm,
mean give up a piece, I'm talking about, all right, taking it out of the comforts of my home and then putting it in a gallery or, another space. Um, I've grown to not so much detach myself from my artwork, but there's an understanding that it's always going to be my art. So I had a piece stolen from me.
hmm.
And unless the person destroys the painting, that painting is always going to be mine. It
Exactly.
doesn't matter if I have it or somebody else has it, it's always going to be mine. And when I came to that conclusion with creating and being able to let go, it's kind of freeing. And I think that's one of the things that allows me to create in public
So do you
because
think,
at the end
what,
of the day, it's for the
mhm.
public.
Right. At the end of the day, it is, for the public. Do you think that, early on you mentioned, that attachment, was it, more emotional attachment to the piece because you put so much into it? Or was it that feeling that sometimes artists have that, oh, I need to do a little bit more. I need to do a little bit more and not.
A
Mhm.
combination of both.
Okay.
Um, there's this emotional attachment where you want to hold on to it, and then there's this. I think there's always this element of I could do more, especially with the style that I do.
Hmm.
Um, I don't think there's one piece that I have that I wouldn't want to tweak, and that
Okay.
for me is the hardest thing to do, especially now that I have this style where I work over old pieces or damaged pieces. That's another thing. Um, I have mixed media pieces that turned into mixed media pieces because I damaged it. Something as simple as kicking a hole in the canvas.
Right.
Am I going to get rid of the whole canvas? No, hell no. I'm going to tape that or sew it or do something with it to make that work with the piece
So
as
now
opposed to destroying it.
So now Cortez is a more mature and seasoned artist. How do you know when to let go? How do you know when like a piece is finished?
Oh, deadlines.
I thought you were going to say something like really prolific, like,
Yeah,
oh, when it
it,
speaks to
it,
me,
it,
you're like, no
no,
deadlines.
it's a combination of things. It's deadlines play a big part of it, and also you just have to know when to stop because I could keep on going. I could, especially with mixed media and collage work. I could keep going. And even with these new abstracts, it took me a while to get to this place where I'm comfortable with saying I do abstract art. Um, it's just one of those things. It's because I could keep on going with the piece. You have to eventually walk away from it and be comfortable with that. And usually I have people looking at a piece and they'll comment on it and say, "Oh, that's beautiful." Tell me
Mhm.
more about that piece. And oftentimes, I'm not telling them that it's not finished.
Okay.
It's one of those things because sometimes I'll spend months on a piece, and sooner or later, I have to let that child go.
So you mentioned, you're really comfortable now calling yourself an abstract artist. Very early on in your career, your work often engaged, directly with social and political issues. What led to that shift towards a more abstract style of painting?
Um, two things. One was I wanted to honestly, I wanted to walk away from doing social commentary to kind of like regroup in a way. So when I do a painting that is just dealing with color, texture, um, it gives my mind a break. But then I started thinking, this painting right here, the song for Assata. I said, all right, by looking at the painting, it's abstract and I could go anywhere as far as titles. So what I started doing was working in a way where, like, I have these two paintings. It's called the Martin Delaney Blues. It's two abstract paintings that are 12 by 36. And at the time when I was doing it, I was listening to, it was a Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon. I'm listening to Dr. Greg Carr and Karen Hunter. And this particular episode, Dr. Carr is doing this talk on Martin R. Delaney. And so I never knew who Martin R. Delaney is. And if you guys look him up, he was a contemporary with Frederick Douglass, but we don't know about him because he's considered our first Pan Africanist. So here is this brother during the time of Frederick Douglass who was more on the path of Marcus Garvey, right? And wasn't so willing to compromise as much as Frederick Douglass. So Frederick Douglass was more palatable, right? So here you have Martin R. Delaney, and I'm working on this painting, and I was like, oh, this is the name of the painting, the Martin R. Delaney Blues. So now, with the title of a piece and it being abstract, and you're looking at two paintings that are fields of blue, right? When you look at it, it doesn't scream social commentary. But now I could give the title, I could give the painting a title that is social commentary. And that's interesting because you look at the painting and it doesn't scream social commentary, but to those who know, it's social commentary now.
And I love that because it still allows the viewer, because oftentimes people experience the artwork before they look at the tag, the
Mhm.
gallery tag that's attached with the title and the information about the artist and the piece itself. But it allows the viewer to experience the piece, and then when they look at the gallery tag, then it allows them to have like a secondary experience and be able to look at the work through a
Exactly.
different lens.
And some of
So,
my abstract pieces, what I
mhm,
do is I'll pick a phrase. So I have this
mhm,
one painting, it's all black, okay? And I took pictures of it in stages. So the first thing I wrote on the canvas was misogyny is the root of all evil.
mhm,
And no, I'm sorry, that's a red piece. So misogyny is the root of all evil. It's a red piece, okay? And so I keep working over it until you can't see the words misogyny is the root of all evil. And then
mhm.
what ends up happening is you look at the piece and it's red, and you're like, that's interesting, right? And then you look at the title, Misogyny is the Root of All Evil, and then someone will ask me, why'd you name it Misogyny is the Root of All Evil? And I tell them, I wrote out those words on the canvas, and now because of social media, I could share it on social media in stages. And so
Okay.
that's another thing. I'm having fun utilizing social media as an artistic practice, if that
And
makes
it
sense.
becomes a part, yeah, it becomes a part of your practice so that you see the piece, but then you're utilizing, social media to kind of tell a deeper story around its creation, what lies beneath, and
Right.
it kind of gives the piece a different life to it, so to speak.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I love that.
And the black painting that I was mentioning, on that it says, "I will not mimic my oppressor."
Hmm.
And that was the first thing that I wrote. So what I did is, I'll at one of my shows, I'll write out the words and walk away,
Okay.
and then come back to it and keep working over it until it's no more. But everybody at that event knows that that title is "I will not mimic my oppressor." And that opens up a conversation. What does "I will not mimic my oppressor" look like to you?
So during this particular segment of our conversation, you mentioned the painting that's currently in the gallery. I think that's a good transition that we reveal to our viewing audience this spectacular piece, and I don't feel like photos do it justice. That's currently on display at the Bridge Art Gallery, a song for Assata. Can you tell us a little bit about why you chose this particular title for the piece and how that title name has, infused with the artwork that you've created?
I actually wasn't going to name it "A Song for Asada." I was going to name it "A Song for Ashley." As I was finishing up the piece, um, a close friend of mine passed away named Ashley. And so I didn't think it spoke to her spirit. And she passed away on the same day as Sada Shakur. Wait, yeah, she passed away on the same day as Assata Shakur passed away. And I said, you know what? "A Song for Assata" is a stronger statement. And it was, how should I say it? It just spoke to me. And this was during those times when I wasn't actually listening to music, but Common has a song, that's a title of one of his songs. And I said, again, having an abstract piece and then giving it a title that is somewhat controversial, I think makes a strong statement. And so that's why I named it "A Song for Asada."
That's amazing. How this, your whole creative process, kind of comes together in a very kind of organic way. Um, Especially when you're doing abstracts, because that's what it's all about, right? The
Mhm.
the unpredictable nature of or nonconformity, as far as abstraction when you're trying to communicate your message and your ideas. When you're doing abstraction as your primary art form, how are you communicating ideas around resistance and identity, um, and memory through your work?
That's really the hardest part, because I'm so used to taking clippings from periodicals, magazines, or even relying on an image that may make a strong statement. For example, somebody gave me that book on lynching, and
Hmm.
it has these photographs and also the text speaking about these lynchings. And what I find so compelling about those photographs is not so much the bodies hanging or the bodies burning, it's the people around it,
Mm.
and looking at the images, right? And also looking at the camera. So to take a piece of that, whether it be the people looking at this lynching or the body itself, the dead body itself, it creates a statement that hits you right away, right?
Right.
With abstraction, it's a lot different. So you're dealing with texture, you're dealing with the contrast, in this case, with the contrast between darks and lights.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what gives it its energy. So it took me a long time to not put something in it that is so blatantly obvious.
Right.
Um, like in this painting, there's segments of the painting that might represent, say, a crown or teeth, and
Mm-hmm.
I do it in such a way where you don't know if it's a crown or teeth. You know, the sharp in the bottom right hand corner, there there's this like kind of zigzag going, and at the time I was thinking of either a crown or teeth. And that's the other thing in doing things in a public setting. What I like to do is kind of tease the audience. So you make
Mm-hmm.
something that's kind of obvious, but then you turn it into something else.
Right.
And doing things in a public forum, I love teasing the audience, especially when you have time to work on something. And whenever I paint in public, I never force myself to finish the piece right then and there. Um,
Okay.
if it happens to be finished in a 3-4 hour stretch, that's really a blessing. But most of the time, I bring it home and I'm able to, in essence, let it marinate. And I
Okay.
really think about the piece and I go back into it in solitude, but with music playing in the background or a podcast playing in the background. And I think that was the challenge with abstraction. It was oftentimes, and even myself, when looking at abstract work, I would look at a piece and say, "Oh, I could do that," you know, or look at a piece and say, "Oh, anybody could do that."
Mm-hmm.
That isn't until you try it. It's a whole different beast because um, even in like I love Basquiat, right? Even in trying to make work look like kind of childish and naive,
Mm-hmm.
for me it takes work to do that. Like this shirt that I have on, it took me a while to be comfortable doing this in such a way where it isn't an accident, you know. Um,
Right.
and
That
you're gonna have
it's
to
that
read.
intentionality.
Right, and you're gonna have to read the comments because I have my look cool glasses on. I can't see.
So that was T. Solomon saying that I know all about, oh, I'm sorry,
That's
Tone
cool. Cool.
Santiago. I know all about marinating. So, Cortez, with your abstract pieces, like I know your work right away, like once I walk in. And I think the reason why I feel like if I see your piece and I don't even know the tag and I can recognize that it's yours, is because I feel like your abstract work often feels rhythmic, almost like it has a musical structure to it. Do you think about your paintings in terms of sound or or like a composition?
Um, Not really. It just kind of coincides. Um, I don't like to. This may sound strange. I don't
Hmm.
like to think while I'm. If I have to think too hard on something, it probably isn't going to flow. I like to just do it,
Right.
almost in a sense where it feels innate. Um, And that's why I think it took me a long time to get to this point. And even with the abstractions, I'm starting to see um, I'm going in a different direction sometimes. But
Mm-hmm.
the whole purpose of anything that I do, whether it be a drawing, whether it be a mixed media piece, I'm always thinking about, I want you to walk away knowing that that's a Cortez. So I believe I accomplished that with my faces, right? I
Right.
believe I accomplished that with my mixed media pieces, that kind of like stained glass look, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then after a while, things start to become routine, and so I've been playing around lately, thinking more about because of AI,
Mm-hmm.
how can I fuck with the algorithms, so to speak.
Right.
So I'm always trying to do something different, but I want people to walk away saying that's a Cortez. And
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 and and I honestly feel that way when I look at your work. Like I know that it's you, and I think it's because and I've seen all of your different styles of work, but at the same time, it's so uniquely you. And when your friend blessed you with the name of your style as esoteric urbanism, that one, I hope you trademarked it for one. Two, that it is yours. And I think when I see your abstract work, to me, why it feels musical in structure, and maybe it's subliminally because of the fact that you're a DJ too, and how, when you're DJing, you got to let it flow. You got to kind of go with the moment, go with the crowd, go with, the atmosphere, and just, let things flow and just lean into the creativity of the moment. But clearly, you're doing the same thing, subconsciously, consciously, with your approach to abstract art.
and like even working on the surfaces, like I like working on square surfaces because I'm imagining that being an album cover.
Okay.
And so I like the whole idea of the possibilities of packaging.
Mm.
Imagine that painting, and then with red, bright red, and maybe a white field with the red, like Supreme, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and
Right.
it's say just Cortez, and that's my album cover, you
And what
know.
would the music style be, Cortez?
What's that?
I said, what would the music style be of this Cortez
Uh,
album?
something, a blend of um, drum and bass with two step with some Afro rhythms in it,
Okay.
and also some downbeat, hip hop or what they like to call trip hop.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just a groove,
Okay.
something jazzy,
Mm-hmm.
something very organic, but at the same time on the thin of electronica, and that's basically me. I love I love obscure sounds. Anything mainstream, I kind of stray away from, and that
Right.
also goes with my artwork. Like one of the reasons I never stopped doing collages. That's my favorite medium. But I
Okay.
stopped doing collages or took a break from it because it started to become trendy.
Mm-hmm.
It became like the in thing. And I said, all right, I need to step away from this for a little bit. And now I'm finding myself going back because I have some ideas that I've never explored. And my playing around with social media. Have you ever noticed sometimes I might do these rants in the morning?
Yes, I do.
So my rants are actually me practicing writing. Um,
Okay.
when my father passed away, or before he passed away, um, we would sit down and would actually sketch and talk and just listen and watch TV. And
Mhm.
I mentioned to him how one of the reasons I never pursued writing was because every time I would write something, whether it be poetry or an essay, he would get a hold of it and it comes back to me with all these red marks on it. So I
Right.
just took it as, oh, I can't write. My father had everything short of a PhD. And so I was very intimidated by him academically.
Okay.
And I kind of regret the fact that my rebelling was just not paying attention in school. That was my rebelling.
Mm.
And my father said to me, "Oh, you write beautifully." And this is, a week before he passes away. He says, "You write beautifully. You just need a little bit of help with structure." And he said,
Mhm.
"But don't sweat that because publishers always have editors." He said, "You'd be surprised how many mistakes are in manuscripts." And I'm like, "Really?" And he said, "Yes." He said, never let that intimidate you. He says, "But you could get better and you learn over time."
Mhm.
And and since my father passed away, I've been writing a lot. And so it's practice. So now with that writing, um, I'm taking pieces of that writing and putting it in artwork. That's something I haven't shared yet. And so,
Okay.
and you're leaving literally a digital footprint of all these thoughts, all these writings, and so are other people. And so imagine taking that and playing with it.
I love that because, so many times we'll let, in all aspects of our lives, fear of judgment or, prevent us from, doing something. And, often say that, visual artists, the practice of visual artistry is like a muscle that you got to keep, exercising it in order for it to get stronger. But it's really true for all creative outlets, including writing, that you got to keep doing it. You got to keep exercising. You got to keep pushing in order to be, stronger. Find your voice. Find how to, make it louder, make it smaller when
Right.
you choose to do it, but you can only do that by continuing to, push the boundaries and push yourself.
Right. And it's interesting because with art, I feel very comfortable
Right.
doing art. Right.
Mhm.
And with DJing, I'm not as comfortable. And I think that's why I enjoy it so much because it's a challenge. And then you're surrounded by a community of people. DJs have the worst egos. And they're worse than artists. It's funny, but there's this
Mhm.
competition thing going, and more so than with art, you know. And
Mhm.
it's one of those things where I kind of thrive off of being uncomfortable. And
Mhm.
writing is, I'm starting to get a little more comfortable with it, but I still feel intimidated because I know so many people who articulate themselves so beautifully. When you know poets, when you know real writers, and you're around those people, I tend to, get all shy and,
You
but
shrink yourself, Cortez.
with artwork, with art, I'm a
Mhm.
little bit more gung ho, you know. And I it's interesting because I mentor a few artists, and
Mhm.
I often tell them to just attack the canvas like you know what you're doing.
So why can visual artist Cortez not apply that same template to writer Cortez?
I well figure um, I've been creating art and in that realm for since I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I've been speaking the English language and writing, but creative writing I think is a little different. And
Mm-hmm.
also I think in this day and age, um, my being a little bit more comfortable with expressing myself kind of falls back to I was I was kind of shy. I didn't speak up as loud. You know, I
Mm-hmm.
grew up in Scotch Plains, New Jersey, and it's interesting because my block was actually my neighborhood. It was a black neighborhood, but we were immersed around white suburbia, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And when, as a kid, addressing racism or speaking up for yourself, it was kind of hard for me to do because
Mm-hmm.
I felt as though I felt as though I didn't have that strong of a voice. And so now, with everything going on, um, I feel as though I'm kind of forced into it in many ways. And then also being around a lot of creatives who have strong voices, that kind of rubs off on me, you know? And so with artwork, I believe I definitely found my voice. And with articulating myself through these rants on social media, I feel I'm finding myself. And I've had people approach me that I've never seen in my life at a festival saying, yo, I really love what you wrote. That was powerful. And
Mm-hmm.
so for that to happen, I'm like, all right, I'm heading in the right direction. And then also my father said, yo, you're heading in the right direction. Keep doing what you're doing.
That's so interesting, Cortez, because um, I always think of you um, as your work, especially not so much that abstract that you're doing lately, but all of the work that I've seen like very early on over the last, what is it, like last 7 years or so, as very political in nature,
Oh, yeah.
and very, Black empowerment, um, speaking your truth, representing, your community. Like that's what I think of your, previous work that you've done.
And
And
it was easier for me to do that through the artwork. So in other words,
okay,
the artwork is speaking for
okay,
me. Yeah.
yeah. And so now, again, when I hear about your journey as an artist, as a person, that what I've always loved about you is that you're constantly evolving, constantly, expanding, your creativity in multiple areas, but it's all growing at the same time. And so now you've added, publicly this writing aspect, and it's, informing your artwork, as well. And now you're saying that, in 2026, you're going to be releasing some of that to the public, where it's a merger between the writing is going to be incorporated, in the artwork, which is, exciting within itself, because, I think of you as, a modern Renaissance man, with
Oh,
your
thank
approach to creativity.
you. I think it's also ADD.
We're going to call it Renaissance.
but, honestly, it's I get bored very easily. And
Hmm.
so the way I create, if you saw my apartment,
Hmm.
and the only reason I'm not like lifting things around so you can see it's a hot mess in here, right? But
Hmm.
I have to work on several different things at one time because, not that I get bored, it's just that I'm kind of all over the place, and So to work on like 5 canvases at once isn't strange, and there'll be 5 canvases that are totally different. You know,
But it's getting those, ideas out, being married to an artist myself, I know, his mentality of, I got these ideas in my head and I have to be able to get them out. And, sometimes, the ideas are coming fast and furious. And speaking to, quite a wide variety of artists, a lot of artists work on different pieces at the same time, but the motivation is different. Sometimes artists who work exclusively in oil are working on multiple pieces because of the drying time.
good line, yeah.
Sometimes some artists are working on multiple pieces because, they've gotten frustrated in not being able to figure out what's the next step within a piece. So they need to leave it
Right.
alone and, do something else. So whatever works with the process, there's no
Right.
right or
And
wrong way.
that's the beauty of being a multi-disciplined artist. You know,
Mhm.
I work on several different things, but it all feeds together. Like with the writing, um, I just saw a documentary where, you know, Basquiat, like I never really, early on, I never really studied how his creative process. And I'm now
Mhm.
learning that a lot of what he does, I do.
Okay.
I'm wait, let me see. What's there's a hmm, the movie Bamboozled,
Mhm.
okay? There's this guy on TikTok, or not TikTok, but YouTube, FD Signifier. So he did this deep dive into Spike Lee, and he touched on the movie Bamboozled, and so Mantan was what's his Savion Glover's character, right?
Mhm.
So they have this thing called the Mantan Manifesto, and as they were talking about it, I wrote it down and I put it away, and then I realized, oh snap, I do this all the time. I've been doing it. You know,
Mhm.
write down ideas, and then I'll go back to it. And if somebody lifted up one or opened one of my notebooks, it's just it looks crazy, but it makes sense. And all of those little things that I jot down are going to end up in a painting at some time.
And I love that's, a part of your process, the aspect of your process, because you allow yourself to be free in the creative space, in the sense of just writing things down as they come to you, to come back to it later. And the way
Mhm.
that you paint outside, and you're not really thinking about it, and you're just letting it flow. And that's a free way of a freeness to your creative process.
Yes, yes, and the interesting thing is too, sculpture is a love of mine, and I haven't figured out what that's going to look like, right?
Mhm.
And so it's like 2 years ago, I backed up my van and forgot to put a painting in the van and ran
Mhm.
over this painting. And the painting was in a dresser drawer.
Mhm.
So now I have this painting that's destroyed. And I'm like, oh, wait a second. It triggered something. And at the moment, I didn't know what I was going to do, but I took the painting, put it in the closet, and 2 years later, I have a plan for
Okay.
sculpture based on me destroying the painting.
Okay.
It's it's fun.
It's the esoteric urbanism process.
Yes.
So Cortez, this has been like such an amazing exploration into your creative process. I really admire how free it is, in the sense of, you really leaning into your creativity and just letting it flow. Um, Not only what we see here that's on display currently at the Bridge Art Gallery, but also what you're doing with your writing, even with DJing, what you are known for in the artist community, not only for your exceptional artistry, but also the generosity of your time, the generosity to help, another artist as they're, going through their creative process and helping them. And, that's a testament to your character. So I want to give you your flowers and what
So
you
thank
do
you.
and offer, to others, because, you're very, collaborative, and you're very much on the community and empowering others. So thank you for all that you do.
No, thank you. Thank you.
I, I have one like kind of final question for you before we close out this conversation. What do you want people to um, think about when they're viewing this particular piece at the Bridge Art Gallery?
I want them to think about, well, first of all, um, the reason I chose this painting to put in your show was I wanted people to not recognize the work, um, and I wanted it to be totally, totally a new voice. So, looking at this piece, um, and again, looking at it online doesn't really capture the depth of the painting, but spontaneity, rebellion, and Assata was about community. Um, so, looking at this piece and all of my pieces, I want people to walk away feeling a bit rebellious, because I'm always going to try to give you something that's a little different, and there's a lot of layers to me, and this is just one layer.
I love that. You are multi-layered, multifaceted. You are esoteric, urbanism manifested in human form. And I thank you, kind sir, for your generosity in sharing your creative process with the audience. How can people find and follow you, and to stay up to date on
On
your.
social media, you could go to esotericurbanism.com, and then social media, it's all tags: Cortez the artist, Esoteric Urbanism, and my new home is Lounge 257. So 257 Aldine Street in Newark is where I'm going to be experimenting. That's my, in essence, studio. And that's where I painted the ground, and I'm doing all sorts of fun things there. And you could definitely come out, hear some music, see me paint, and prep for other shows.
Fantastic. And thank you so much, Cortez. Thank you to everyone who has commented during this deep dive into the creative process with Cortez, the esoteric urbanism, esoteric abstract artist. Thanks again. And the artwork is currently on exhibit at the Bridge Art Gallery as a part of our 10th year of Expressive Creative Soul. See you
And
soon.
thank you so much for this opportunity. You and
Absolutely.
Chris are wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Bye bye.